So, good afternoon. I guess it's a good moment to get started. Good afternoon again. I'm very glad to see that even on a Friday afternoon, we have quite a few people joining us for this webinar. And this webinar is about the economy for the common good. I would like to start with a very warm welcome to our guests from the Gemeinwohl-Ökonomie Bayern, GWÖ, which is the regional group of the economy of for the common good movement. And today there are three representatives with us. This would be Daniela von Pfuhlstein. She's responsible for communications at GWÖ Bayern, Bavaria, who will introduce us later on to the movement in general. We also have with us Dr. Markus Hölzl. He is the coordinator of corporate members at GWÖ Bayern and will focus on good practice examples and also, quite importantly, the common good balance sheet. Last but not least, Michael von Gerichten is with us, who is responsible for communication and project at GWÖ. He is dealing with all the technical aspects of this afternoon. And I know him from his task to deal with projects, because this is how we started this event, and we both initiated this event today. Please allow me to quickly sum up our speaker CVs. Our first speaker, Daniela von Pfuhlstein, has a background in international business with a focus on marketing. She worked at the Open University as a research assistant before starting her activities for UNICEF and other institutions. She has joined Economy for the Common Good in 2018. And our second speaker, as announced already previously, is Dr. Markus Hölzl, who has a PhD in business administration from the University in Erlangen. He worked for more than 35 years in senior management and consulting positions in various fields and has become a self-employed coach, business angel, and consultant, and much more, I believe, with a particular focus on sustainability management. Please address the flyer for this event today, where you find a little bit more information about our speakers. So, what do we want to do today? This is not a typical symposium. We want, on the one hand, we want to provide two sets of 20 minutes input, but this would be followed by interactive sessions. So your activity, your participation is required. We're going to use Mural and a voting system later on. Just to let you know, for all technical reasons, if you haven't got any experiences yet with Mural, for instance, we will provide a brief introduction how this actually works before we start the first interactive session. Just a general thing not to forget, that we're recording the session. This might be important if you show your face later on in the discussion, because we want to provide this opportunity later on. So if you have any issues with that, please be aware of the fact that we are recording this session. At the end of this event, we hope that we will have a lively discussion with all of you. And for that, throughout the afternoon, you have the opportunity to post your questions in the chat here. Everybody is probably quite familiar with the chat functionality of these systems. So this is one option. For the discussion at the end, you also have the opportunity to ask your questions personally. As I said before, by posting your question in the chat room, in the chat, or by just posting a star sign or symbol, which would indicate that you would like to post your question personally. And Michael will allow you to show your face and also to use your microphone throughout our discussion at the end of our event. What else do you have to consider? Please also be aware that it's important that if we do have a lot of questions, it might be that we cannot answer all your questions during the event, but the the speakers have agreed to the fact that you use their email addresses to contact them personally in case you would like to continue your discussion and ask you questions personally. Good, so these are the technical requirements. Before we start, I also would like to briefly explain why I'm actually hosting this event today at Macromedia University. I'm personally the head of the master program MA Design Management and MA Design Thinking. Design Management and Design Thinking aims at using design as a very powerful tool to unleash the potentials of organizations. And as an important part of this approach, or a important part of this approach, is a focus on people. Yeah, we call this a human-centered design approach. So on the one hand, people come first in our research and development activities, yet we always also focus on a big picture and the potential systemic impact in highly complex environments. And also we have to be aware that design solutions that are brought into the world do have an impact on changing existing situations, if you will, and hopefully into preferred situations. And in order to understand the potential impact of designs, we have to look very holistically at the world and have to question also, and this is quite important for me personally as well, we have to question constantly existing paradigms. And to sum it up, we aim not to do less bad with our activities, but to do actually good, which is a big difference. So the economy for the common good movement is working hard to achieve that, actually. So I'm very glad to welcome again Daniela from Pfuhlstein with the first presentation and her introduction to the movement. So please, Daniela, get started anytime when you're ready.
Thank you, Oliver. You've done a wonderful job already at introducing the economy for the common good, which is abbreviated ECG. So if I might say ECG, it's the abbreviation that we frequently use for economy for the common good, not to confuse you. I am assuming that you are seeing my presentation now. I just want to let you know before I get started that after today's symposium, you will receive a handout with links and all sources that we show and mention, including Markus's and my presentation. And here are a few young ladies from the ECG in Brighton, UK, who also want to explain the movement to you a little bit and welcome you. I'm letting them speak for themselves.
We find ourselves in unprecedented times in more ways than just one. Inequality is rising, the environment is in crisis, and people are disillusioned. Do you want an economic system that does better? The Economy for the Common Good, or ECG, is a grassroots movement which aims to foster deep and systemic change by transforming the economy from the bottom up. We're setting up a local chapter of the ECG in Brighton because we believe in creating an alternative system led by the values of justice, dignity, sustainability, and transparency. The key concept is to make the common good the purpose of the economy, rather than the endless accumulation of wealth. The idea that profitability should be the sole focus of business drives the exploitation of people and the natural world. It's time for this to change. In the ECG, money is the means, not the goal. The goal is the common good. We're living in a new era and we have the power to shape it. So, how does the economy for the common good work? The basis of the movement is the common good balance sheet, which goes alongside a business's financial balance sheet. It measures a business's impact in the areas of human dignity, solidarity and social justice, environmental sustainability, and transparency and co-determination. Companies' business practices are assessed, and they are scored in each of these areas. Companies with a good score can be rewarded with legal and financial incentives. This is already happening in other parts of the world.
These incentives will mean that in an economy for the common good, the ethical choice will also be the most cost-effective, and it will still be profitable.
Current corporate social responsibility measures are often just token gestures for PR to improve a company's reputation, but not their actual impact.
The ECG is different because the balance sheet holistically reflects their actions and exploitation cannot be hidden. There are currently 100 local chapters worldwide and over 400 companies across Europe for the common good balance sheet.
This crisis has disrupted business as usual and presents us with an opportunity to reevaluate our priorities and rebuild a better system. We don't need to wait for new politics to do it for us. We can do it now. If you believe that the values of dignity, solidarity, sustainability and social justice should be central to our economic system, then join us. Business owners, employees, pioneers, and anyone who shares our vision. Together,
let's make Brighton an economy for the common good.
So, after this welcome by the British ladies, I want to welcome you once more and tell you what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to introduce the basics, goals, and values of the economy for the common good. We'll take a look at the common good matrix sheet, explain to you what makes it a social innovation, how the SDGs can be implemented, and then take a look at what do sciences say about ECG and its application to the business world. And then we'll have the proactive activity where you can share your own values with us, and we'll have a look at those. So, about 600 companies and organizations, 60 municipalities and cities, as well as 200 universities and schools apply ECG or focus on the issue. The concept of the common good was forgotten for a long time, but recently it has been moving back into the public consciousness. There are equivalent concepts in all cultures, such as buen vivir in Latin America, Ubuntu in Africa, Dharma in Buddhism, or happiness in Bhutan. The common good is also reflected in numerous constitutions of modern democracies, and that's what we're going to look at now. You see here a number of constitutions and laws of many countries, and all of them have the common good at their center. Timo Meinhard, who's a German professor, says, quote, "Obviously, every language around the globe has a word for common good. Moreover, name a social theory that does not involve the common good. It simply does not exist." End of quote. The reality in our Western business world, however, is different. And that's what we're seeing now. Here you see the split between the minimum wage and top income at companies. The most extreme are the US finance industry, where there's a fold of 360,000 times. ECG suggests a maximum of 10 times. In reality, though, a lot of ECG companies operate around threefold between minimum and top income, since their focus and goal are shifted. So in the economy for the common good, money is no longer the goal of the economic activity, but only a measure. The goal is the common good, thus the good life for all. And this goal is based on 4 values: human dignity, solidarity and social justice, environmental sustainability, as well as transparency and co-determination. ECG's value drive means that in a common good economy, living in dignity should be possible for all people. Inequalities in income, wealth, and power are kept to a minimum. Consumption of natural resources remain within the regenerative capacity of natural ecosystems and planetary boundaries, so that current and future generations enjoy equal opportunities, which is exactly the decision of the German top court of last week, and the disclosure of all relevant information and involvement of stakeholders for important issues. So I guess you now question yourself, how can we operationalize these values in the business context? And that's what I want to share with you next. What you see here is the heart of the common good, economy for the common good. It's the so-called common good matrix. It's a model for the organizational development and evaluation of activities, which assesses and scores the contribution to the common good. The values shown in the columns are those which promote successful relationships and a good life. The rows reflect the 5 stakeholder groups. Those are the suppliers, the owners in equity and financial service providers, employees, customers, and the social environment. And these groups together give us 20 common good themes that describe and evaluate an organization's contribution to the common good. A number of research projects based on the model of the ECG have been and are being performed. One of those performing research is the University of Valencia. They host a chair for the economy for the common good, and in one of their studies, they compared 4 CSR models. Their empirical study, in which 206 companies with a common goods balance sheet participated, classifies the ECG model as a social as well as entrepreneurial process. And it states that the ECG model is very suitable for the implementation of the SDGs. SDGs being the Sustainable Development Goals, and that's what we're looking at next. You're looking here again at the ECG matrix now with just a little bit of a different design. And within that matrix, you're seeing the 17 SDG icons, which I assume most of you at least are somewhat familiar with. This implementation in the ECG matrix was developed as part of a scientific project. The sustainability goals can only be achieved if all of us, governments, civil society, and the economy work together. This presents a large leverage effect, and increasingly more business owners want to know how they can incorporate the 17 SDGs into their everyday business practices. And this is where ECG can help in the process with this tool. So these are 2 very current scientific publications. On the left hand, you're seeing the special issue of sustainability. It contains papers with a wide range of aspects related to the ECG as a framework and to operationalize sustainability in business context. On the right-hand side, you're seeing a book, which is based on the conference of the ECG, the first scientific conference on ECG, which was held in November 2019. And this book collects all the papers that were presented there. In terms of applying ECG in the real business world, as I mentioned before, more than 600 companies around the world have published their common good balance sheets. And here you're just seeing some covers of common good reports. They are also sometimes designed and creatively made. So now we're wondering, which values are important to you? And for this exercise, we've prepared a moral board, and you will find that link in the chat in a moment so that you can easily go there. Just to explain the whole thing to you, please enter as a visitor. That's very important. And then you can creatively and freely enter your thoughts. You can add new notes by double clicking, which will give you also some editing options. It's kind of like little post-it notes popping up, and you can enter text there. You can also change the color if you'd like to. Just be free and creative. And after about 10 minutes, Michael will start clustering these post-it notes into various value categories, and we'll see what comes out of it. A second step that we've prepared for you, there's a little star prepped. You can choose, each one of you has a total of 3 stars, and you could either accumulate them for 1 or 2 values, or you could value individually with always just 1 star. And later on, we will look at those results together. This is what this moral board looks like. So if you could please go there, you'd find the link in the chat by now. And let me just show you, if I double click here, I get this, and now I have my post-it note, and I can add my value, and I could change my color here. So have fun with this, and we'll get back to you in a few minutes.
So this is fantastic. I see the board is almost full. Thank you very much for participating. Really a big thank you to all our participants of this event today. It seems like a couple of people are still active. How about we use another minute, just one more minute, to finalize this board. And Michael is already clustering. I can see that happening too. This is excellent.
It's funny to see. It almost looks like ants crawling over the screen with all these arrows and names.
Absolutely. It's like a zoo with all these different animals participating. It's really lovely.
Panda, lion, horse, seahorse, rabbit.
Good, it's working nicely. I also would like to invite Daniela, maybe you would like to join me. We wanted to comment a little bit on these different values and see what the outcome really is. Maybe I get started a little bit. So we have, as I said before, a huge variety of different values appearing. Many of them are very personal, of course, and this is what we expected, of course. This is what also the concept of the economy of the common good is also about. But Daniela, you would possibly tell us a little bit more about this. So what can we see? I can see, for instance, trust appearing quite often as a cluster. Then we have, just playing with transparency, for instance, is appearing several times as well.
Empathy, human-centered. So all these relationship values like trust, empathy are here. Diversity, tolerance. And then yes, transparency, fairness, solidarity. Equality is here quite many times as well. And appreciation, I'm assuming, is also one of these values of how do we treat each other as human beings.
But maybe not only human beings, each other, but also the surrounding world, the living and the non-living entities around us.
You're right, appreciation of nature. Yes, generosity.
I can also see honesty several times. So honesty is also an important value. Integrity, also important, yeah.
Now starting to give them the same color. I think that could really play along here.
Fairness, I can see often as well. Good. So thank you very much for helping also Michael in clustering and trying to find a common thread in these different perspectives. So the next step, if I'm not mistaken, is that we can use this star sign, the star icon on top. Can you see that, the black one? Maybe Michael can also copy a couple of those, maybe to make it easier for everybody. This is excellent, exactly. So the idea was now, in a typical design process, to make a choice. You would have the opportunity to, in this case, you would have, I think it's 3 stars each person. Yeah. So please choose only 3 stars and place them where you find the most important values for you personally. So you can choose whatever value you find valuable in that sense, or important for you. And then we're trying to figure out if you can find some sort of hierarchy afterwards through, to validate these different values.
And the idea was that each of you has a total of 3 stars, and you could either accumulate them to 1 or 2 values, or you can give them to 3 different values.
So it seems like we're almost done. Shall we try to do it again together, Daniela, and see what outcome we can find?
I'm finding it interesting that there are barely any stars further over to the right, the area of solidarity, reliability, appreciation, altruism. Now there's a star appearing.
But this was obviously influencing the outcome a little bit by pointing it out.
Yeah, I just noticed that having the entire overview, that I noticed the stars are very much clustered towards the left, and the right is very star-free. They're very much in the center. What do we have in the center? Trust, integrity, honesty, authenticity, empathy, very important.
But also tolerance, diversity, inclusivity. So this is
yeah, transparency has quite a number down here. Equality has a lot of stars.
But also on the top right, sharing has quite a few stars.
Yep.
And also fairness. Fairness has a lot of stars too, yeah? So excellent.
Right. But some people still seem to be distributing their stars. But I would suggest that we will save this image, and with the pack that you're going to be receiving after this symposium, you're going to get this image as well. So I guess it seems like we're done.
Excellent. Thank you very much for participating, everybody. Beautiful to see your activities here. And I would suggest that we continue with our second speaker, Dr. Markus Hölzl. So I would suggest that you start sharing your screen, and please feel free to get started anytime.
So I hope that everybody can hear me. Well, so first of all, also a warm welcome from my side. Thanks to Oliver and Daniela for, I think, that great introduction, and also, of course, your strong participation in working on values that are important to you and how you also rate them. It's my turn now to move a little bit to how companies can translate such values, or the key and core values of the economy of common good, into their own entrepreneurial practices, and how good practices could serve as an example also to other companies, how such a value-based management system can work. I want to cover basically 3 topics. One you have seen already, that is to give a brief overview how the ECG matrix works as a tool and a methodology to create a report on an ECG-based performance, and to evaluate this performance within the matrix. Then I would like to give you a couple of good practices that might have also some relation to the areas and branches of the Macromedia University. And at the end, we'd like to get a little bit your opinion on a number of questions which relate to the implementation of the economy of common good in company practices. As you've seen already, the values of the economy of common good are these four, and they serve in a certain way probably as a kind of meta level to cover also values that you have brought up on the whiteboard. Like human dignity, for example, of course, include values like fairness and other human values, solidarity, social justice, environmental sustainability, transparency, and co-determination. I think all that, of course, was also on the whiteboard, but I think a couple of other values probably can be subsumed to these core values. Taking these four values and relating them to the 5 stakeholder groups every company has, like suppliers, owners, employees, customers, and other companies in the industry, and the social environment, creates that common good matrix. The movement of common good is currently using the matrix 5.0, which just shows that also, I think, enhancing and improving this system is, I think, a permanent aspiration of the economy for common good, because of course with using this matrix, all companies are learning and are improving. I will, in the good practices, cover 3 matrix areas, fields, which is day 2, which relates to the cooperation and solidarity with other companies and customers. It's D3, which focuses on the impact on the environment by the use and disposal of the products and services of an enterprise. And it's E3 that is related to the reduction of the environmental impact to the social environment. Working with the ECG matrix, I think in principle, for every company that decides to prepare an ECG report and an ECG balance sheet, which at the end also will be audited independently, I think is usually by approaching these matrix fields by asking provoking questions. And I just have a few examples here, which, for example, is which actions reduce the environmental impact and climate impact of suppliers. This is one of the questions that need to be answered if you work on A3, which is the environmental sustainability in the supply chain. B2, for example, provokes questions like, are profits used to secure the future of the business, or are they distributed by dividends or other uses that probably do not contribute to a common good interests? D4, customer participation and product transparency, is provoking questions like, can customers participate in the design of products? So is that something where I think there is interaction, there is participation, co-determination, I think also with customers with regard to the design of products? Or human dignity in relation to employees is, how is equality, individual responsibility strengthened in the working environment? And E1, I think the human dignity in relation to the social environment. Do products fulfill basic needs, or do they, I think, more fulfill luxury needs, or areas that probably are not basic needs for a society? So the ECG balance tries to find out good practices that the company is already applying and performing, but more to identify potentials for more positive impact and how to realize them. So fundamentally, applying the ESG balance sheet, the ESG matrix, is not only to, I think, get an accurate picture of the present, but more to probably define and start a journey of continuous improvement with regard to these values and to these 20 matrix fields, and then create a strategy and create an ongoing effort in the organization, in the company, to improve the ESG performance. So the questions that might give guidance to such a process is, what are your value-based impacts? So measure what the impacts are, define dashboards, KPIs that allow you to measure these values. How can you develop your organization in an ethical direction? Do you promote transparency on all your corporate activities? Do you create credibility with all stakeholders? And how does your company compare with best practices? I think this is a fundamental aspect that the Economy for Common Good, I think, tries to use best practices as good examples that a different approach to business is possible. And this is very much, I think, how we want to give examples to the industry, to the economy, to other companies, what can be done to probably achieve a much more ethical, much more sustainable business and industrial performance. So 3 examples of good practices, and I have clustered them a little bit also in the areas that the Macromedia University, I think, has in its master programs and academic programs. So I think there is one example that relates very much to media management. That is the company Buch7, who is a kind of ethical Amazon. I will look into that by their contribution to the community. There is in the business management a real high-tech company, Elobau Green Electronics, showing the impact on the environment of the use of the product and disposal of products and services. Then in the area of design management with Randiger Ottilienquelle, a very good practice of how design can create, I think, a strong cooperation and solidarity with other companies, and by that also contribute significantly to a more sustainable product design. Let's start with the Buch7. Buch7 is a company that was founded in 2008, so already quite a few years ago, with the aim of using the business for the aim of donating a large part of its profits to ecological, social, and cultural causes. So I think it was fundamentally a typical social enterprise. And in the beginning, it was quite a tough start. So the business model, I think, did not really work very well in the beginning. But then came a breakthrough in 2013, which had very much to do with some high-profile documentaries and information in the public about the working conditions at Amazon. And this created, I think, a strong interest with customers to look for alternative sources for books. And from that point on, Buch7 started to grow significantly. Various blogs, journalists picked up on the topic, and so the awareness of Buch7 increased significantly. Today, Buch7 is a company with 14 employees, more than 3 million euros in sales, and a cumulative donation of more than 600,000 euros which corresponds to about 75% of their profits. How did they achieve that? I think, or how did they create this business purpose? I think one aspect is that, of course, they have picked an industry that provides a relatively stable margin by the book price fixing that exists in Germany. So I think overall, they use these price levels to finance sponsorship and not to maximize profits. They use and interact very actively with their customers to get suggestions on what projects organizations should be supported. So they create then a pre-selection of projects that are presented to the entire team. And so at the end, I think they are very flexible and very, very fast, but also very transparent in deciding which projects should be funded. And they can fund also very small associations, groups. So I think a very efficient way of identifying and then supporting good projects. Employees are working mainly part-time and from home and with very flexible working hours. So it's a very, very social environment for the employees. There is no personalized advertising, nor any data exchange with third-party providers. The advertising slogan shows the solidarity and sensitivity of the team to the problem of retail. So the claim with which Buch 7, I think, promotes their business model is, I prefer to buy at my local bookstore, but if I have to buy online, then my choice is Buch 7. And Buch 7 also uses only open source software and support the work of free developers. So also there, a very solidarity-based concept that is implemented in the key foundation of their business model. So Buch 7 is a very good example of a company that is very much focused to the contribution to the community. And this is certainly an unusual start of a company which main purpose is to donate as much as possible. But on the other hand, it shows that I think there are so many good projects, important projects in the social, ecological, and cultural fields, especially I think right now when we see I think how many areas are significantly suffering from the pandemic, that unusual ideas are, I think, a good approach to contribute to such projects. And Buch 7 is undoubtedly doing an outstanding job for the common good. And this example shows how the power of such a goal, I think, can generate a significant contribution for the common good. So this was an example of a social business with a clear proposition and with a great implementation in its business model and a very successful business today. Let's come to a second company and a second good practice that is in the area of the impact on the environment of the use and disposal of products and services. The company that stands for that is Elobau. It's one of the leading suppliers of sensor technology. It's a worldwide supplier in its fields. It has a very holistic understanding of responsibility and ecological sustainability. And to show you that, I think the easiest way So what is Illobau doing to really be such an environmental and green business in an area where I think high tech is, of course, the core of its products? So the company, as you have seen, is extremely focused on a climate neutral performance. So all products are manufactured by using self-generated renewable energies. All emissions along the entire value chain are accounted for, including all emissions caused by purchased parts, transportation, and employee mobility. Product design is geared to ergonomics, efficiency, durability, and safety, which is pretty much supported by customer surveys that determine wishes, expectations, and requirements for future products. All materials and construction methods are challenged to improve the ecological sustainability of the products. For example, no hazardous and toxic substances are in their products. There is a modular design for the separability of the parts, which makes it easy to repair the products and to recycle. All products are bolted to make subsequent recycling straightforward. And 70% of plastic is bio-based. It's petroleum-free plastic or apple leather and other new materials that are developed to replace plastic in their products. Illobau spare parts are available for up to 20 years, and sustainability is a strategy that is fully transparent to customers, and therefore I think they are also always, I think, the most critical audience for them to continue that path of product design and product development. So they have also developed an in-house test laboratory where all environmental impact is simulated and ensures the longest possible product life for all their products. So Illobau is convinced that an intact ecology and a socially balanced society are the basis for the long-term success of the company, and that money and markets should serve the people and not the other way around. At the German VDMA Association, which is the association of all machine tool companies, Illobau acts as a best practice in the SME sector, and therefore I think is beyond the economy of common good also in the industry. I think a real example on how these values can be implemented and performed on an ongoing basis. Let's come to the third good practice that is, again, in a different area. It is about cooperation and solidarity with other companies, which is related to customers, but of course also to competitors and partner companies in the same industry. The company is Randeger Otilienquelle, and it's about their design of a packaging system, the peel bottle, and how they also have clearly decided for themselves that they limit growth and respect planetary boundaries. The company we are talking about here is a very old one. I think it was first mentioned already in 1816 as a pure health-giving water source in Baden, so in southwestern Germany. And in 1892, somebody acquired, George Fleischmann, the spring, as well as an associated spa hotel. And in the 19th century, they already developed a glass bottle to replace the clay jugs that have been used in the past, and so started to also, of course, create new ways of distributing this healthy water. Now the company is in the fourth generation of family ownership. It has been a leading exponent of collaboration in marketing and product development for half a century. And in 2019, the company, along with other cooperative German mineral water wells, celebrated the 50th anniversary of the introduction of the so-called pearl bottle, which has become Europe's largest reusable bottling system. How did that come? In 1969, the mineral water industry was looking for a sustainable packaging strategy. 200 mineral water companies joined forces to create a new standard for fountain bottles with the aim of saving packaging material. Designers, glass makers, customers were involved in the design and the now familiar bottle shape with a slim waist and 230 beads distributed around the body of the bottle. The pearl bottle is still used today to identify and distinguish pure mineral water from other waters, and has become an exemplary reusable system that is unparalleled throughout Europe. Uniformity benefits bottlers. So I think it is, of course, standardization in packaging, and on the other hand, limits the bottlers that branding of their products is purely based on labels. Bottles can be returned for reuse all over Germany from all these different 200 mineral water companies. And glass, of course, is one of the best materials for recycling. It can be recycled infinitely. And therefore, of course, it's also, I think, a very sustainable packaging material. In 2019, after 50 years, this pearl bottle design received one of Germany's most prestigious design prizes, the German Design Award, which of course confirms the approach and the value of such a design. Cooperation and solidarity, I think, of course, creates, in this case of Randeger Otilienquelle, that Randeger focuses on the purity of its products and challenges its industry to resist growth at any cost. Randeger itself serves only customers in a radius of 50 to 60 kilometers to the water source. And to maintain the high quality of the water, they have invested and supported also all different kinds of sustainability measures. For example, they have purchased meadows in the catchment area of the spring to make sure that there is no pollution of the water by agricultural or other impacts coming from the other use in this area. So this is a good example for cooperation with other companies, which shows one very important element of the economy of common good, that the focus in business and in the economy should be more on cooperation and less on competition. And what that can create, I think, is very well shown by this example. So this is more or less my presentation, giving you some good impressions what companies are doing today, but some already for many, many years, to create a different way of doing business and doing that very successfully, economically, but more for the values they are living for. And I hope that that give you, I think, a very good, inspiring introduction how the economy of common good is implemented in the practice of companies and what this can achieve. So we would like to get now a little bit your opinions on what you think from everything that you've heard today from Daniela, but also I think from these good examples. And we have 3 questions, whether you see ECG as an innovative approach for companies, whether ECG is an innovative concept for continued improvement of companies, and whether you would like to learn more about ECG as a part of your studies in the field of design and business and where you are focusing on. And for that, we have now put into the chat a platform that allows for evaluation of these statements and how large your resistance is on a scale from 10, very high resistance, to 0, non-resistance to these statements. And we would probably just see how you see and evaluate these statements, and then we would like to enter into an open and hopefully very lovely discussion with you, and I'm looking forward to all your questions that we might have provoked with our presentations today. So thank you very much, and I will now just move to this Acceptify board, which you can also approach by using the link in the chat. And you then can very easily just go for all these 3 questions to bewerten. Unfortunately, this is in German, but 0 is no resistance and 10 is heavy resistance. And if you all then make this evaluation, we will at the end see what the group of participants in our symposium today, I think, sees for these 3 topics. So I will just give you now a couple of minutes to do your evaluation, and then we will see the results. Michael, can you see that there's already evaluation going on? Because I don't see anything.
Yes, evaluation is going on, and it's possible to show the results already if you want to. Therefore, you have to change to the view of German Ergebnis. It was the
okay.
next.
I go back.
At the top?
At the top. Here. Very good. I think this is, of course, very encouraging that there is a very high acceptance, I think, to almost all three questions, with, I think, the highest one to learn more about ECG as part of your studies, which is pretty much, I think, a task then we have to hand over to Oliver.
Yes.
And which, of course, also gives you, I think, a very, very good feedback that probably this symposium today, I think, is of interest for you. And I think with more than 80% of acceptance also for ECG as an innovative concept and an innovative approach for companies, it seems that the message did find interest in the audience of today. So Oliver, I may hand over to you, I think, to probably comment from your side on this result.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, Markus, for this excellent presentation. Very interesting, of course, in terms of facts, but also very inspiring. I can see only green bars, so this is a very positive aspect. I think what is interesting to discuss now is, first of all, what I'm very interested in is the realities out there or so. Yeah, you mentioned already these wonderful case studies. Yeah, these 3 case studies with proper success, financial success, as a company success, and so on, with a completely new way of thinking about growth, about also limiting growth, about the value of a company in general. So the paradigms here I'm very interested in. And I'm also very interested what all our participants think about this. So please remember that you can participate by just using our chat and ask a question there, or even simpler, just use your keyboard and add a star sign, and we will get you into this conversation. And it's a much livelier conversation. We are not having hundreds and hundreds of people in the audience, so we could have actually a nice chat here rather than just answering your written questions. So please feel free to come forward with any thoughts you have, any questions you have, any comments you have as well, I would suggest. So it's not only about maybe questions only, but what your thoughts are here. So if I make start until as a warm-up even or so for this conversation, both of you, Daniela and Markus. So we have seen in Daniela's presentation already that a couple of hundreds of companies and organizations in various countries have adopted this model, even municipalities using that, so the public sector somehow. So it's interesting. What is happening? Is this exploding, or is it growing slowly in that sense? I'm just very curious what the developments are here.
Who wants to answer?
Should I pick that one, Daniela?
Go for it.
So yeah, overall, the movement of the economy of common good exists now for about 10 years. So of course there have been a few pioneers 10 years ago that have started to prepare ECG reports and balance sheets. But what we are clearly seeing is that there is a strong pickup over the last 1-2 years, and even today, I think, of course, the overall discussions that we see are a strong confirmation. And so there are a lot of companies that are starting to consider, I think, in their sustainability reporting to use the ECG balance sheet as a very holistic and good way of probably really covering all aspects of their sustainability management. But it is not only companies, it is also, and I just see that there is a question in the audience whether ECG matrix also is applied to NGOs. Yes, it is applied to NGOs, to social and charity organizations. And it is also used in a slightly modified way also for communalities, so for cities and smaller communalities, that they can also, I think, use the ECG balance sheet and matrix to assess their performance and their approach to implement, I think, these values in their own strategy and political agenda.
So what I would like to add is that, of course, due to current corona crisis, makes a lot of people think about our system overall, and the call for some kind of system change is becoming ever more intense and louder. And so a lot of people have recognized that ECG might be an alternative system, which has also supported recognition and call for something like economy for the common good. And in terms of nonprofits, the largest nonprofit that we have, that I assume everyone here is familiar with, is Greenpeace. Greenpeace Germany already did their first balance sheet 5-6 years ago, and like last year or the year before, they did their second common good balance sheet.
Thank you. We have a question, another one?
Yeah, I'm seeing that about circular economy. Do you feel very qualified to answer that one about circular economy?
Yeah, of course. I think circular economy is undoubtedly, I think, of course, one direction that is implicit in the value of environmental sustainability and how this can be implemented, I think, throughout all the stakeholder groups. I think that, of course, has a strong aspect in the supplier area, but also in product design, packaging, and the whole development of products and services. And of course, also in the environmental impact to the society and to the social environment. So circular economy, or as some concepts are called in Germany, cradle to cradle, I think are very helpful concepts that companies can use. And this, of course, then also gives them a very positive assessment in the performance that they have in the area of environmental sustainability. And so I think it is in a certain way implicit, and I think it's a supporting concept, I would say, or a supporting approach for this element in the ECG matrix and ECG balance sheet.
Okay. Then I would take the question about the region in Spain. You are referring to Valencia, which I also had mentioned before, the University of Valencia. Valencia also, for instance, has a program right now that they're financially supporting private companies when they're drawing up an ECG balance sheet. And they have also done an ECG balance sheet for the municipality. Overall, Spain as a country is very ECG friendly, very much open for the economy, for the common good, and there's a lot happening there.
May I add to that, Daniela, do you have any idea why this is the case?
Yes, I can answer that question. The initiator of the economy for the common good is Christian Felber. He's a publisher from Vienna, but he studied, amongst other things, Spanish. So he's fluent in Spanish. And so the ECG was initiated in Austria, and that's also why we're very large in Bavaria, because we're bordering, and so it swept right over the border. And then Christian traveled extensively through the Spanish-speaking areas. And so kind of it was Austria, Bavaria, Spain. And then also another region where we're very large and very well known and far spread is Latin America, for that very same reason that Christian has been there and simply because of his language skills.
Mm-hmm. So it's not a sort of an issue with a certain cultural aspect or so to it. I'm just wondering really if this is the case, maybe the different kind of values that are sort of cherished in different locations, different cultures and so on. I'm just wondering.
That would be an interesting question and aspect. Maybe we should look deeper into that. The only explanation I've heard of thus far was the language. Mm-hmm. And of course, also because there was material available in Spanish very soon, it was very easy to then be adapted to Latin America. Mm-hmm. Whereas the majority of material exists in German and English and Spanish, so it's difficult to get it in other languages.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Sure.
We have another question regarding the Lieferkettengesetz. I don't know the translation, to be honest.
I think I'm happy to answer this one. Of course, the Economy for Common Good is strongly supporting the Lieferkettengesetz. To control and evaluate the whole supply chain of a company is a very, very important element for the application of the ECG balance sheet. So overall, I think there are, of course, also very, very good examples of companies that already have a very great transparency and assessment of their own supply chain. So I think ECG supports the Lieferkettengesetz strongly because it gives a legal framework for something that we are trying to achieve by the ECG balance sheet. And of course, all the values that we have in the ECG matrix, I think all cover topics that the Lieferkettengesetz tries to improve. I think whether it's human dignity, whether it's environmental and social aspects in the supply chain. So overall, I think we see in the discussion for a Lieferkettengesetz more or less a confirmation that what we are trying to achieve with the ECG matrix with regard to the supplier and supply chain of companies, I think is just now also accepted and acknowledged and implemented by the government. Good. Next question. Sustainability scorecard. Yeah. Of course, there are a lot of concepts, and we would never say that the ECG matrix or the ECG balance sheet, I think, is the only way of assessing, evaluating the sustainability performance, the ethical performance of a business. I think, as the questionnaire already mentions, I think probably the sustainability scorecard focuses pretty much on the environmental sustainability. So this is something that, of course, is part of the ECG balance sheet. As already mentioned, I think we try to have a pretty holistic approach. But of course, this scorecard can be applied very well together with preparing a report and the balance sheet based on the ECG matrix, and then using the scorecard as a continuous improvement tool to see whether the company can make steady progress with regard to areas that they have identified for improvement or for potentials that they have not yet approached and focused on. So overall, I don't see any kind of competition between a sustainability scorecard and the ECG matrix. I'd rather see them as complementary tools that companies can apply and can be very helpful in their overall sustainability management system.
Mm-hmm. We have even one more question. I don't know if...
I think, Daniela, you now become the expert on Spain and Latin America, so maybe I think I hand it over to you.
I mean, I guess it's a hypothesis that cooperation is higher ranked in Spain and Latin America. I really couldn't confirm that, but maybe that would be a research project that you can do for your master's thesis. Would be my suggestion here.
So I'm not sure if this person is actually a student with us, so, but never mind. Thank you. So maybe I can jump in a little bit with one question I would like to discuss is, Daniela, you mentioned already some drivers in our society that drives this change, which also supports this new sort of movement in that sense. And you mentioned already the Corona crisis and all kinds of, we could look at all kinds of crises, if you will, from sustainability, climate change, and so on, which is really on our plate more prominent than ever. So it seems like nobody can get away any longer without changing to some extent. Are there any drivers that help really to take it further? So I'm wondering, because the reason why I'm asking that is, and maybe it needs some explanation, is that we, from design management, design thinking, we try to influence all kinds of aspects from an economic point of view, but also from a societal point of view. What needs to be improved that the ECG movement can flourish even more or so? This is a question from my side. So maybe it's a little bit confusing what I'm trying to achieve here is it's because we have consumers on a B2C or B2B level, yeah, and it's obvious with examples like Buch 7 and so on, that without these customers choosing the brand for a particular reason to purchase from, Buch 7 wouldn't exist anymore or so. So we need our consumers and our users to make this choice. And this is, I'm wondering how this could be supported in any way.
Well, the biggest support would be through politics. If politics would change right now in our current system, companies that produce cheaply, pollute the environment, treat their employees badly, and then can sell their products cheaply to consumers, are receiving advantages, they're getting tax advantages, they're getting subsidies, etc., etc. Companies that actually produce their products under fair conditions, really look at all the influences their production process has on the environment, are almost being punished by having to pay higher prices and don't get any incentives or support from politics. So the biggest leverage would be through our political system if that would be changed. And I mean, as you said, there's the end consumer on the one hand, but ECG is a very broad aspect. So we mentioned before also, for instance, the municipalities. I've mentioned Valencia before, but there are also other cities that support the private industry in their city when they draw up an ECG balance sheet. That's another way that political subunits can support the system. Also, when it comes to public procurement, so if a city purchases the products it needs for its own administrative operations, they could also, right now, most cities, just when they have to, whatever, in your town hall, if they need paper to write on, they have to buy the cheapest. They don't have other criteria. So if they would change the criteria for public procurement and say, we want to buy from companies that produce under fair conditions and have the environment in mind, this would change very, very much. So the politics is really where the big leverage point is, to support companies that operate in a sustainable and social responsible manner. And then the products eventually would also become less pricey for the end consumer. And then, of course, I mean, you know, all these surveys of customers who all say, well, yes, I do want to buy organically grown food, but we all know that the majority of them don't, also based on statistics, because they simply find it too expensive. So
I fully support and agree with everything that Daniela said. Nevertheless, I think there are also strong market forces that probably create positive momentum. One is certainly in the consumer area, that there is a continuous increase in the importance of regional, sustainable, biological products. So overall, of course, there is a growing part of consumers that rank these kind of criteria higher. Then there is, in the area of employees, certainly also a clear dynamic that I think, and we talk to a lot of students here, that the younger generation, I think, is looking for more purpose, as we say, in their jobs, which of course creates also a strong need for companies and corporations to think about the working environment, and to I think in the war for talent, to be an employer that lives values, not only claims values, but lives values in its own working environment and organization. And there is now increasingly a third market force that makes it very important for companies to consider their environmental, their sustainability, ethical performance. And that is in the financial industry. I think banks increasingly start to do their rating and credit assessment of companies, not only on financial performance, but also whether these companies are not doing a business in a very unsustainable way, and report on their impacts to the environment, to the society, and also in social aspects and for human dignity. So overall, I think the access to also credits or other financial means becomes more and more dependent also to strong transparency on the sustainability performance of businesses. So this is also a market force that, of course, creates a demand for, I think, reporting and assessment and evaluation in these non-financial areas of the performance of a company.
Thank you very much, Markus. I think it builds a little bit on the consumer aspect that I mentioned before. A comment we had in the chat, I just read it aloud quickly. It is hard for consumers to find orientation with all kinds of certifications and labels. Hopefully this will be more transparent soon. Would anybody of you would like to comment on that?
Yes, we're actually in the process of working on a label for the economy for the common good, so that hopefully in the future you will know which products have a common good balance sheet. But yes, I can completely agree with you that it is a lot of homework for a consumer to be an educated consumer and know which products can you buy feeling good about and which ones are not so good. Right now, I mean, you can go to the website of the Economy for the Common Good and find out which companies have done their common good balance sheet.
Okay, great. This is a great advice, really, to see who's already participating. This could be an example, really, for the future. If you look for a company you would actually like to work with or for or together, this would change or maybe influence your opinion quite significantly. Also in terms of outlook for the near future. Yeah, if you want to invest in partnership and cooperation with a company or companies, this might be a decision point, really. Particular also, and I agree with all of you that what you have been saying in terms of talent war. Yeah, so where do people actually want to work for, which company, and so on. So this very interesting aspects, and it seems like there's a a significant shift happening in our society, maybe starting, or maybe particularly starting from Corona now, right now, through this crisis. So any further comments from our participants or any further questions maybe? Good. I think this was a very interesting conversation, very interesting discussion really as well. And I think I would say to be continued at some point, and hopefully we can also somehow continue to work together in educational terms. I would really highly appreciate that. I think the event today really showed interest from all kinds of directions. Also the voting and the polling showed that there's really also further interest. And I don't know, there's difficult for me to find final words for this event or so. But I find it particularly intriguing that this system is such a holistic perspective on our society and our economic aspect, which seems to be very promising because it looks way beyond the bottom lines, the double bottom lines. What is the result of an organization? It looks at the result on a bigger scale, on a societal scale, on a sustainability scale, and so on. And I think this is the first system that I know from or about that does try to include all that. So for that reason, I think it's a fantastic way to look at your own business from a completely different point of view, really. So maybe you guys would like to have some final words for our event or our gathering.
Markus, want to go first?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. I think, Oliver, first of all, for giving us the opportunity to present this to your Macromedia audience and students. It was a great pleasure to have that presentation and discussion today. I think we will provide some documents, and these documents also include our email addresses and whatever. So I think we are very happy to be available also for students or for other people participating today to approach us and to answer questions. So thank you very much for this great event, and I just hand over to Daniela.
Yeah. Also, thank you from me for having us. What I was just thinking with the last words that Oliver has said is that I remember talking to a company manager who had just completed the common good balance sheet for his company. And he said, this is just the greatest management tool. It's given him a 360-degree view of his company. And he said, quite honestly, I don't really care about the result. What I care about is the knowledge that I've gained through this process and what I can do with this knowledge now going into the future steering my company, because it just asks questions that people don't necessarily think of when they manage their company. And so, yes, thank you very much for having us, giving us this opportunity to present here. Hopefully again, and maybe even in person. That would feel nice, other than just looking at these rectangles on the screen. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So I think these were great last words really for this event. And again, as I said, to be discussed in the future. And so I wish you good luck with all your endeavors and activities. Please keep us posted, even if you have new activities, let us know, or events or anything. I'm happy to pass this on to our students. Otherwise, I wish you a fantastic weekend and hopefully see you soon. Yeah, take care. All the best to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.